Everybody's exhausted after a phenomenal day yesterday. And we are only here this morning to work out the nuts and bolts of the program going forward. So, what we would like to know, the discussion that Zoe will be a very strict moderator on to keep us all on time is who we are, what we represent, what we're going to do, how we're going to spend the budget, potential links that we would like to further develop with our colleagues from Indonesia, the Netherlands, and Suriname, and deliverables. So this is these are those conversations. Um, um, is it possible for us to just grab a chair and put it around in a circle? So at least it's less presentation wise. Um, I think and I'd really like us to lean on the experiences of Suriname and Indonesia, who are already so much further in this. Joining us online is Dr. Catherine Pillay from UKZN. So I know, Catherine, I know you can hear us, but if you can post any questions or comments in the chat box, and our wonderful UWC colleagues here will pass it on. Thank you. Because I have a soft seat, but it'll help me.
It's okay. Thank you. No, no.
So, yeah. Take a seat for the time that I'll be. Please, again, show me how this is all. Yeah, the starting point was that with grand sauces. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we go. Oh, is that good? Okay, that's good. So it's fine. We'll use it. That's on there. Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Good to see you again. And this is a closed session, so we're among us. Happy to see you and to be here. This is going to be a little bit more like organically a program that we have made. But still, there are some thoughts that I would like to share with you. Introduction. And here is the program of today. What we would like to do is to share thoughts of the partner projects. And we have asked you to be able to give your thoughts and share thoughts with the other people to see whether there are connections to be made, what the synergy could be, but not necessarily a power presentation, but really, off the fly, because like Sheena said, South Africa has been very much at the start of the projects. Some of them just recently, were invited to do so. So this is why we are chosen to do this in this way. And I think it's also important to let you know that Suriname and Indonesia have been working already on this like uh, more. And in that sense, I would like also to ask for your patience, because sometimes it might seem that we are repetitive, that we are maybe a bit slow, or that people are getting impatient. But it's really, we are working on different timelines. Some universities have been already almost working for a year on it, like for Suriname, and others are just about to start. So please bear in mind that that is the different timelines that we're working with. So we will have a discussion of the various South African partners, and we will also be talking during this morning about results that we would like to go through as deliverables in the sense, and also a structure of being able to connect with each other. That should be online, I think, which is not ideal, but it is what it is. We have also been preparing this symposium mostly online because, of course, from the Netherlands, we couldn't come over. And it can work. I mean, there's some flaws, obviously, but it is also the way we have to be working together. So, let me show you also the project timeline. I hope it's visible for everybody. So originally, the end of this project was supposed to be December 27. And don't take it too seriously, really, because there has been some postponement, and I will be going back to the Ministry of Education to ask for that the end date is mid 28. It's already there, I think. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So Elaine will also send this information via email to you so that you can just read it very, at your own pace and time. Um, but and again, this is not written in concrete. I'm very happy that the Ministry of Education is quite flexible because they also know your workload, that you have many other obligations, and in that sense, it's a model, but it's not reality. So very happy, but we do need to have something to stick to, but don't take it too seriously. And if there's any very big delay or postponement, just let us know, and then we can see how we can work with that. Um, Again, this will be shared with you. Um, yeah, before I'll start, and I think this is a random order, we would like to invite the partner universities to present their thoughts. I would like to remark that Suriname has already their own research agenda. They've been talking about it yesterday a bit, and they would like to give it to you because there's a hard copy of it, and maybe we can. Shall I just pass it on, or would you like to do it? Yeah, because I think it might be also give you an insight about a university that's already been working on this project for a year now. And they have compiled this research agenda with various outcomes and concrete results that they'll be working on. And it might just be inspiring to see how they do this with the various outputs that they have. So they have a number of copies. I think it's 30, so that should be enough for this audience. And you can use that and refer to that. Yeah. So yes, please, you can share it with the people around. Yeah, everybody. Oh, we're making it an official picture moment, which is good. Just go ahead. We love pictures, don't we? Next one, University of Free State. University of Pretoria.
Because they've got a flight to catch for the presentation.
Oh, yeah, sure, sure. Yeah. University of KwaZulu-Natal. They're online. Okay, online. But you want a picture moment. You want a picture moment. Stellenbosch and Solplaatje. Stellenbosch University and Solplaatje University. I'm not sure. Go ahead. Same picture. Okay, thank you so much. I just heard that University of Nelson Mandela University has to catch a flight, so you'll be the first to present your thoughts. Please. Mm. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? Very well. It's a beautiful day in Cape Town. Yeah. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the opportunity, um, Professor Esther, and for inviting Nelson Mandela University um, to the symposium. Um, for us, I'm also representing my community. My community is in a partnership with Nelson Mandela University, and we working on what we call the indigenous knowledge systems. So it is important, this project, because we've been working for some time with community, and I think this project has come at the perfect time. And in terms of the project, the question is then what, how, and when will our contribution is. And the what part is under the International Knowledge Cooperation, IKC is which we call it. Um, we are exploring the evolution and the afterlives of Dutch Afrikaans. As you know, my surname is Stierman, and that is closely linked with Dutch. And I'm coming from a community that predominantly ons praat Afrikaans, for those that can understand. And we all know that Afrikaans is very close to Dutch because I had experience with some Dutch people, and as ek Afrikaans praat, dan kan hulle Nederlands praat en ons verstaan mekaar. So yes, we exploring that. Also, our partners that we're working with in terms of community. I'm coming from the northern areas community, and we're working also with the schools, and I'm also obviously in terms of the indigenous knowledge systems. My community, the First Nation community, which I represent, is called the Gamtower House of Klaas and David Stierman. Now, before I continue, there was a statement made in 1799, which was done by my great ancestor. His name was Nicholas the helmsman of Nicholas Stierman. And he said the following. He said, restore the country. Speaking now to an Englishman, John Barrow. He said, restore the country of our fathers which had been despoiled by the Dutch, and we have nothing more to ask. We lived here contentedly before the destroyers came and molested us. Now, that is the motivation behind us that want to participate in this project, because within our community structures, there is a lack of identity, because we are operating currently under the colored identity, which is an apartheid construct of who we are. So many of our people don't know their heritage, their roots. And for those that don't know, it's Heritage Month in South Africa from 1st September until the 30th. That's why you will see I'm wearing the skin, because the skin is for people to understand there is or are distinct communities amongst the other communities within South Africa. So we're also working on the how part. Our core focus area will obviously be the excavation of archival material, which we are currently working on the critical engagement with the digital Robert Gordon archive collection, because Robert Gordon was a traveler between 1770 up to 1780, passed on in 1795. Now, Robert Gordon was the one that traveled extensively within the then Cape Colony, and he made many recordings within the Eastern Cape. And that's where he met the community which I represent, and they have extensively recorded the information and the interaction of who the people are. But also adding to that, um, what many people don't understand, and that's what we are trying to achieve, is to educate in terms of social cohesion in South Africa. That there is no separation in terms of our Xhosa brothers within the Eastern Cape and the colored community, the so-called colored community within the Eastern Cape. And we are working very hard to make sure that that history that was recorded by men like Robert Gordon, because he lived amongst those people. He recorded in their diaries the day-to-day who the people are, because in history, we will always, for those that are doing research, that many people's names are not recorded in history. only certain people. Most of the time, it's the leaders that were recorded in history. But Robert Gordon took time because he had a lot of time using the daylight time to interact with those communities. So that is what we are also doing or trying to achieve. And then also we uh, we are looking at the urban everyday evolution of Afrikaans Dutch, looking at um, where people are rapping. I don't know if you understand rap. Um, the lyrics is in Afrikaans. So we are trying to promote that, getting kids together, working on ground, what we call ground zero. Now, ground zero to us is those people that don't have a voice in society, that we are bringing their voices within a certain space where we can hear, even under the legal framework currently in South Africa, which are called the Act 6 of 2019, which specifically deals with IKS and the protection of that indigenous knowledge, that those people are hurt in terms of projects. So that's what we are also gonna, further elaborate on. And then the when will obviously be, we will have workshops in September, also planning workshops for November 2026, carrying it on into February 2027. So working obviously with the schools, carrying on with the education in terms of identity, indigenous knowledge systems, and getting the broader community together so that we can at least, you know, uh, I will say the low hanging fruits will be that we explore in terms of identity, that we have these workshops, have these conversations, that people can understand. Because in South Africa, currently, many people don't understand what their rights are. And I think it's important that our people need to understand what their rights are. And when decisions are taken, we have the free, prior, and informed consent of the communities for their own protection. And hence, that's why I'm getting involved to make sure that our people are not exploited, which is important. And if they are part of the project, that their rights are protected within that project. Yeah. So yeah, that is the work that we are planning to do with our project. Thank you. Oh, I forgot. Now, I'm representing also the royal family of the Steerman community within the Eastern Cape, and we are working as colleagues. He's my friend. His name is Mr. Farouk Abrams, and he's also my royal advisor in the Steerman Royal House. Thank you. I think I did mention the outcomes. You see, that's the that's the advisor. Um, so yeah, the potential outcomes will be, we will be writing a journal article, also poetry compilation. We will also do a book, and then also a project report. Thank you, my advisor. Any questions? A duck bundle. Okay. Okay.
Um, Coincidentally, but importantly, I'm heading an NVO project looking at Robert Jacob Gordon's travels from the Cape up to Plettenberg Bay,
Mhm.
and layering that with land dispossession and forced removals
Mhm.
on it. So there's a really great connection. You obviously take it further,
Yes.
but we're really great to keep you bring you in to that, because we are working deeply with the Robert Jacob Gordon collection, both in the Netherlands and here. So thank you.
Just wanted to let you know that we are also recording the session. So there will be a report that we can also see the overlappings between the projects and possibilities for working together. So, this is kind of ephemeral because we're just talking and brainstorming, but there will be a report. So you can also, after this meeting, look for possible ways of cooperating with each other, just to let you know. Thank you so much.
Um, You also already said that we have to catch our flight, so we will recuse ourselves. And those that are in the country, welcome the people of Suriname and Indonesia. And let's stay plugged in. Let's work together and make things work. And thank you from the Netherlands for coming up with this project, supporting this project, and let's make it a success. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Just wanted to let you know that Dr. Abdul Wahid is here, but he is taking a Zoom business meeting online. He'll be joining in, I think, an hour or something. But he's here and he will be back. Okay.
All right, let's move through the list of participants. Next, we have University of Venda. Would you happy to go? Great.
Colleagues, good morning. I'm Sianima Vijala from the University of Venda. Yeah, I'm Sianima Vijala from the University of Venda. But before I went to Venda, I studied at the University of Pretoria for my master's degree. And yeah, I've been to places in Africa and the rest of the world in terms of issues of research. But let me be specific. I'm a historian. I have a PhD in history, got from the University of Venda. Yeah, at the University of Venda, my department is human sciences in the Faculty of Humanities. So we have got, a various, units within, our department. One of which is history. That's where I belong. Uh, we have just introduced a new history program, started last year, 2020, 2025. This is the second year of the project. In the project, while I was developing the course outline of the modules, I found that there was a gap in relation to the issue of slavery because of issues of ignorance in terms of the curriculum. I found it to be a very important theme because slavery affected the rest of the world. So we are part of what the world is doing, especially in terms of this research project that we are embarking on today. So our project of reviving the curriculum at the University of Venda fits very well within this bigger project that we intend to embark on. So the actual theme that I'm dealing with is a transformation in Southern Africa during the 1600s. The arrival of the Dutch in South Africa changed the whole complexion of the history of the country. Today we are speaking and emphasizing what actually happened. But because I said ignorance is one of the things that uh, put us in a very difficult situation. As we speak, we still ignoring some of the important aspect of our history, of which slavery is one. Uh, South Africa got into democracy in 1994. The issue of curriculum was somehow changed by the government of today, failing to consider what really affected the rest of the people. And of course, in addition to what I'm doing now as a historian at the University of Venda, I'm working on some other modules with regard to international relations. The issue of slavery is connecting the rest of the world. How how is the world connected today? We are debating this issue as universities, but some are still out of this particular picture. So how do we deal with that? Because we are connected by one critical issue. issue that we are tackling to try and then do away with the, distortions in our interpretation of the past as the global community. So, well, besides, I authored a book last year in 2025 relating to the liberation of Southern Africa. Southern Africa, I mean the SADC countries. So part of this book relates to how Southern Africa came into being. So one of the issues that led to me doing a study on the liberation of South Africa, I relate that, the liberation to the slave resistance against the government. We know there have been a number of, slaves that resisted against, their treatment globally, not only in South Africa, globally. So the resistance gave context to my book, the book that I authored. So back to the book, I related it to the international community. Liberation of Southern Africa at the United Nations. So the contents, some of the chapters relates to question of human rights. Human rights, very critical in this, discourse that we are having today. And then it connects to the whole human beings throughout the globe. So we are talking, but at the same time, we somehow neglected the important aspect of it. So slavery was a global issue, and then that's why I connected to international relations. How are we connected as the nations of the world? So this project that we are doing, colleagues here, we met somewhere at the University of Venda. Unfortunately, Prof. Jagede is one of us. He's not here today. He's committed, somewhere, somehow. But yes, my study connects to him. It's a legal person. And then I'm sure from that angle, I see us, as part of the collective in terms of, addressing the issue relating to our project. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Could you please let us know what specific deliverables will be attached to the legal practice of this project?
Uh, two legs. This project, I think it was initiated by governments, yeah? South African government and the Dutch government, relating it to the cruise. How do we reconcile as nations of the world? So when you talk of, for example, of the slavery itself, people's rights were violated, and then how do we interpret that today? Now that we are all, everyone is aware of the fact that we still have issues that relates to our past, and then the governments have initiated this project so that we can try to redress the imbalances that were created by the situation at the time.
Okay, fantastic. Is this going to be a report, a journal article?
Yes. Already I have some sort of writings, for example, that are also part of the book. For example, let me give you an example. I have an article relating the impact of the armed struggle on international law, human rights law in particular.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I think we can move on to the next university. Thank you. Should we move on to Salt Lake University? Do we have representatives? Fantastic.
Morning, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, first of all, and thank you for the opportunity to represent the university. thank you for being in the room, and more importantly, to being at the table, so to speak. I was just looking at my own self, my past, and I started at this university in 1986, which is 40 years ago. This very place. So coming back to university is actually very important for me personally. And then the connection between myself and the Netherlands also dates back many years. I was part of the first project, well, could be part of the first project. I think you will know it, the Tana project. I think it started in 2001. So I had the opportunity to do my doctorate at Leiden University, and this project essentially comes from that the center is there. So university is basically going to do four things. Let me just speak about that. We tend to do an article, a research article, and it's essentially my work, which I started many years ago. So it gives me an opportunity to sort of finalize it and to pick it up. It's essentially a court case, sad story. It involves a slave girl, woman, being raped by her a father, well, a stepfather. So it's a story of, and the names, it's a court case dating from 1760s, 1776. So I will be delving into that and looking at she has a slave past. Nella van der Veer, and her mother was a free black Cornelia, Johanna Cornelia, and the stepfather involved in the story is, just for interest sake, is Adam Bauer. He was a a person from Germany who came here to Cape in the mid 1770s. So the article is there. We're working on that. If we will be working on funding an honor student. The honor student was here yesterday, and then also a master student. We attend funding. Then, as far as we would like to involve the community. We have a community engagement project involving the Malay community of Kimberley. You may know the area of the so-called Malay camp, which was founded shortly after the discovery of diamonds in Kimberley, and then it was that area people were removed and just put there from that area. That whole area is essentially back into the hands of the university. So a lot of things are happening at Solplaatje revolving, or rather involving the Malay camp. Then we were looking at also language in that community, especially Afrikaans, and then involving the schools. But we will also be looking at the history of the Malay camp, language, culture, food, and then involving the children, the schools as well. And then we will have a public lecture. Um, have one. We haven't thought of a title yet, but it will be um, involving this topic, and then finally, um, hopefully, we will also. Let me just say 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I've spoken about the four. So it's a public lecture, the article, the community engagement project, and the funding of the student. Thank you.
Fantastic. That is great. So I know that there's a special issue coming out on slavery. Will that be? It would be wonderful if that journal article could be a part of.
Well, I would imagine so. Yeah, we just need dates for that one. Yeah, do you have a date? Are you doing it, Professor? You?
UKZN, sorry, so UKZN, the partner, Dr. Catherine Pillay, she's editing that. I know she's online, so she will reach out to you directly
Yes. Okay.
for that. So that it's a phenomenal, any one of those would have been enough, Prof, for it, but it really is a remarkable contribution.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay.
Fantastic. So I'm just going to go back to the list. Should we move to UP, University of Pretoria?
Yeah. Um, the University of Victoria, thank you very much, will be doing a comprehensive annotated bibliography that we will bring into an online archive that will be mapped with story maps as well. So, oral histories, along with a comprehensive annotated bibliography, bringing together all the literature within our our partners here, so that we can have some idea of the wealth of the study of slavery in one place. What we still need to discuss is where that will be hosted. Um, because it has to be open access. It would be great if we can have it hosted at all our universities in some or other place. And we'll be reaching out to each of you to draw us to those who are not only writing conventional academic texts, but creative works, archives of the ordinary to bring into that. So that's the UP contribution. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? No? All right. I think we had the University of Free State. Right.
All right. Maybe could I just hold this? Thanks. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to our organizers. The program yesterday was fantastic. So we're from the University of the Free State. I'm Jared MacDonald. I'm a historian by day, and I'm joined by our Deputy Vice Chancellor. Yeah, don't read too much into that. No, I sadly I'm also an administrator, so that takes up a lot of my time, right? But that's why it's been such a delight to be here. But I'm also joined by our Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation, Professor Vasu Reddy, and Prof. Reddy has a background in sociology and gender and many other things, and so he also has a keen interest in the work that's being done in this broader project. So what we are hoping to do as an initial kind of project is to produce a short documentary film. How short or how long is still to be determined, probably as long as we can make it. And we're playing around with the title, although we will work on this. We want it to be a bit catchier, but we're playing around with the title of The Other Slavery. The Other Slavery. So the reason being is that the starting point for the documentary is what we think is a fairly simple observation about how we tend to treat the history or tell the history of slavery, especially in South Africa. And when we think about Dutch slavery in particular, we tend to think about ships crossing oceans and slave markets and ports and the plantation economies that developed around them. But in the South African context, Cape Town, of course, naturally becomes an important focus. It was a major node in the Dutch East India Company's colonial network, and of course, an important center of the slave based economy. But slavery, of course, did not end at the port. And that's really where our documentary will begin. So we want to move away from Cape Town and we want to move inland to the settler colonial frontier of the Cape Colony during the late 18th and early 19th centuries, because we think the frontier presents us with a rather different history of slavery and unfreedom. So, as Dutch speaking settlers expanded into the interior, they encountered indigenous communities, particularly the Cape San, but others as well, whose ways of life depended upon access to land, to water, to game, and other resources. And settler expansion progressively disrupted those systems. Land was appropriated, hunting grounds were lost, cattle were seized, and violence became endemic. And as indigenous communities were dispossessed, a growing demand for labor emerged within settler society. So, what developed on the frontier was therefore not simply a conventional slave system, as we tend to understand it, but instead we see a spectrum of coercive relationships emerging: captivity, forced labor, servitude, indenture, and apprenticeship, which I'll touch on a little bit more soon. Don't worry, it's fairly quick, okay? And these all existed alongside more conventional forms of slavery. And we think this raises one of the more interesting or most interesting questions for the documentary. What do we call someone who has been captured, separated from their family, taken to a settler farm, and compelled to work, but who is not formally classified or recognized as a slave? And that question is particularly important when we turn our attention to Indigenous children. And children are actually going to be the center of this story. So, archival evidence shows us that large numbers of Cape San children were forcibly removed from their communities and incorporated into Trekboer society. Trekboers, this is another term we use to describe these settlers, right? Based on my own research, I've made a conservative estimate that as many as 5,000 children were transferred from their communities to settler society between 1770 to 1830. And although the fragmentary nature of the evidence means that, we have to treat that figure cautiously, like I said, I do think it's actually a conservative estimate. So this puts it well within the region of the numbers of children, for instance, that were caught up in the stolen generations in Australia, but it's kind of largely unknown and unrecognized. Now, what is particularly disturbing is why children were so valuable in this context. Primarily because they were regarded as adaptable, right, as changeable. They could be taught the language and customs of settler society. They could be trained to perform domestic and agricultural work. And crucially, they could be separated from the social and cultural worlds into which they had been born. And what comes out of the archival records is this kind of narrative that Cape San adults were beyond redemption, right, too far gone in terms of their savagery, in inverted commas, but that the children could be worked with and molded into something else. Settlers needed labor, but the incorporation of Indigenous children also contributed to the destruction of Indigenous social worlds. So this is why the documentary is interested in the experiences of these children, not simply as laborers, but as children. What happened when a child was separated from their parents? What happened to their language? What happened to their identity? What happened when they were taken into a settler household and expected to become something other than what they had been? And so these questions, we hope, will allow us to tell a very human story, but will also allow us to say something important about settler colonialism. And I think just coming back then, one of the most revealing terms that we will explore is apprenticeship. So by the early 19th century, when the Cape Colony, of course, now transitions to British colonial rule, colonial authorities increasingly sought to distinguish apprenticeship from slavery. An apprentice was supposedly being protected, trained, and prepared for a productive life, right? But if a child has been forcibly removed from their family, was unpaid, had little ability to leave the household in which they were placed, and were compelled to work, how meaningful was that distinction actually? So the documentary will therefore explore the gap between legal status and lived experience. And it will ask what it meant to be free in a society in which Indigenous children could be forcibly incorporated into settler households. And I think then that brings us to the broader question of slavery's afterlives. One of the dangers of thinking about abolition, and this came out yesterday, is that we sometimes imagine that slavery simply disappears at the moment that it's formally abolished, right? But the history of the frontier suggests something much more complicated. The institution may change, the terminology may change, but the legal categories may change, but the underlying demand for labor and the unequal relationships between settlers and indigenous peoples can persist. So the practices associated with slavery could therefore be transformed into other forms of coercive labor. And we think this is told very compellingly, again, through children's experiences. So ultimately, we see the documentary is making three important interventions. First, it decenters the port. It moves the history of Dutch slavery from Cape Town into the frontier, where it intersected with settler colonialism and indigenous dispossession. Secondly, it places indigenous people, and particularly indigenous children, at the center of the story. They were not peripheral to South Africa's slave economy. they were themselves subjected to capture, forced labor, and incorporation into settler society. And then thirdly, excuse me, it gives us a different way of thinking about the afterlives of slavery. As I said, rather than seeing abolition as a complete rupture, we can trace how practices of coercion, labor control, and indigenous dispossession were transformed and reproduced in new forms. And that ultimately then is the question at the heart of what we are calling the other slavery. So, how did forms of unfreedom created on that frontier contribute to the making of modern South Africa? That's the story that this documentary seeks to tell. I'll just say that we are very kind of comfortable with the timelines that have been proposed. So thank you for that. We do have some experience in this area of making documentaries with Professor O'Connell, and Prof. Reddy is kind of a bit of an old hand at it. So we do have kind of networks that we can draw on. We've already roped in Dr. Rebecca Swartz, who's also at the University of the Free State. She's a leading scholar on children and childhood in Southern Africa. We also have working with us Professor Mohammed Adakari. He's retired, but from the University of Cape Town, leading scholar on the genocide of the Cape Sand peoples. So we'll be drawing upon their expertise. And also, I'm very pleased to say that in the last couple of days, we've built some new connections with colleagues that we see very fruitful collaborations emerging from. We would hope to and plan to kind of screen the documentary, maybe even as a premiere at the Free State Arts Festival, possibly next year, if not next year, the year after, certainly. And we then, of course, also look to take it much broader to as wide an audience as possible. And then I also just want to mention that Professor Reddy and I have committed ourselves to contributing to the special issue of genealogy that is being guided by Dr. Pillay, and we're very pleased to be a part of that aspect of this project as well. So you can see kind of how these collaborations are already emerging. And our contribution will also deal with much of the theme that I've outlined here. So yeah, thank you for that.
That was fun.
So I'm blown away.
Thank you so much for the elaboration of your project. I'm also have to think of a similar, well, not maybe similar, but a project in the Netherlands that is cooperating with Indonesia, which is called Childhood Separation, which is exactly also on this topic. Did you know this one? The childhood.
I have heard of it. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so these are colleagues from University, Radboud University in Nijmegen, Marit Montero and Maaike Derksen and Chiara Kandale, and they are about to finish it. And it's about really the orphans who were not really orphans because sometimes they had their parents still, but mostly of mixed race children, Indonesian Dutch children, but also Indonesian children, who were considered not to be educated enough, and the Dutch colonial government took them out of their own families in order to be re-educated. And this was the same morally similar system. So I think it's really important that you could connect to them, and I can provide you with the context.
Thank you. Amazing. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So Sheena is proposing to screen the documentary if it's finished in the Netherlands. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Esther. Any further questions, comments? Yes, please.
Thank you. It's very fascinating. Indeed, documentaries is it's would be like a very powerful medium as well, yeah, for the form as an intervention form in public discourse about slavery. And then I think as Esther mentioned, indeed there was a project about that, about child separations going on. I think it's in Nijmegen, which is also in collaboration with my university actually. Uh, so in our coming project, we are thinking also similar line actually, because there will be part of our project is going to be like working with the artists, and then we are really like push them really to produce something in the form of art, of course different forms of arts. Actually, documentaries might be one of them. And yeah, child separations, and then also children in the plantation complex is also very important, because that's really, can really show how the continuation of this indentured labor, slave labor, uh, really like putting these children in the same box for their life actually cannot really have option or alternative. So it would be great, and then we can really share the project with you as well.
May I just quickly respond? Thank you for that. No, that's really appreciate that input. Uh, Professor Reddy and I have been speaking about how one of the challenges for us in making this documentary is its visual representation, because children, by virtue of being children, are typically silenced in the archive, right? So it's very difficult to get actual child perspectives, and that's not just in slave-based contexts. I mean, it's kind of the world over. So. Having said that, there are enough like nuggets in the colonial archive to pull out some of this, and so we're going to have to think about how we do that. Narration is going to be, I think, quite key. Um, Visuals of landscapes, of place. So that's going to be a steep learning curve for us, and I think we'd really appreciate whatever advice and lessons that you could share as this. We have the concept, and now it's like, how do we translate this into film? And I think we are fully cognizant of the challenges, but we believe it's possible, and we're excited about where it's going to go. So
Yeah,
thank
thank
you.
you. If I may, to add, for the challenge in our side in Indonesia is also the fact that this practice is also involving religious institutions. So that, which is quite hard actually. For example, church, but also some Islamic religions as well, because those children was sometimes displaced, forced displaced from their parents, and then they are that's kind of mechanism to convert them sometimes. And then, but anyway, well, it's wonderful to hear your project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. Thank you. Right. Uh, oh, sure. Can we do UWC next?
We have to go. If you can just briefly, yeah, like literally
Okay.
2 seconds, thanks.
Um, Yeah, so thank you for this opportunity. And, I know I've been in and out of sessions. So I don't have a very clear sense of the continuity of things. But I'm actually between meetings and I'm free to stay until 11:45. And then just another apology. I actually joined the project really quite late. So I don't have a sense of what other colleagues are doing. But just to say that when Sheena included UWC in the project and she presented to us the possibility of getting the bit of funding from the NRF. What we decided to do with the funding is actually to pump it into scholarships for our students, because there's been a great interest among our students, given their backgrounds and their family histories. There's been a great interest in South Africa's slave past and Cape slavery in particular. So I, for example, have. I'm currently supervising an MA mini thesis where a student is looking at. So my background is in literary studies, and there are actually a number of very interesting literary works about slavery. Um, so I'm currently working with a student who's looking at a very recently published novel called Song of the Slave Girl by Ashraf Kaji. But that is just one of a range of novels and works that looks at slavery. And then I also supervised a PhD student who looked at Rada Jacobs's what's it called? The Slave Book. Breda Jacobs's The Slave Book, and that tells the story of a slave, a girl child transitioning into womanhood. But my student actually looked at the novel from the perspective of the child. So her PhD focuses on child experiences in South African literature, and the slave period was one of the periods that she looked at. So we're hoping to launch through these scholarships. We're hoping to perhaps to launch a series of sort of interconnected research areas through postgraduate student research, exploring a range of areas that may be of interest through slavery. And I was thinking of, in fact, linking it with sort of well-being. So slavery, intergenerational trauma, and well-being, so that one has a sense of history, the present, and also transformation. So that is the way we thought we would participate in the project. Yeah. So I'm going to be here till 11:40, and then I'll vanish again. My apologies. Thank you so much. Questions, comments? Nope. All right. I think we can move on to the next. Can we say Stellenbosch? With Bonita. Okay. Yeah.
Problems with mics. So, morning, everyone. I entered yesterday as UP, and today I'm speaking as Stellenbosch. I embrace multiple identities, and I love it. So, um, the major output for the Stellenbosch component is going to be a publication. And just if I can give you a little bit of background, you will recall the press which kept coming up both in the site walk on Monday, and then also a lot of Cape Townians will know about the Prestwich burial ground that was uncovered in 2003. And while they thought there were going to be a small number of human remains found there, and the process was embarked upon in terms of archaeological testing, and they found that there were actually more than 3,500, or approximately 3,500 individuals buried there. There was the contestation between kind of social history and dating, and finding out the kind of scientific evidence from actually researching on the human remains. And as part of that, the community outcry and also support for having the sorry, that's the grammar sounds a bit leaving the remains in the ground as a site of conscience and an opportunity for the city to mourn and to reflect on what this meant. That battle was lost, but part of the protest was to have a vigil, a candlelight vigil around the burial ground, which is now a fancy apartment block. And then linked to that, and looking at the social history of who these people were, it was discovered that a large number of the people there were the enslaved people who were buried outside of the formal burial ground for a number of reasons relating to finance and social standing and so on. And that gave rejuvenated a campaign that had started post 1994 called the December 1st movement. So December 1st, 1834, followed by a 4-year apprenticeship until the 1st of December 1838, was the day that chattel slavery ended here at the Cape. And that was a day that fluctuated between commemorating the trauma and also celebrating the achievements and the legacy of the enslaved people, celebrating what they'd done in terms of buildings, basically building the city. So a practice started, and I was involved from about 2005, and it's evolved now until 2026. We're having 21 years actually of this commemoration, that through working with a kind of approach of critical fabulation of Sadia Hartman and all other forms of thinking, we imagined what it would be like to, at the stroke of midnight on the 1st of December 1834, what did that feel like at the time and what happened? And so some of it is, there's historical content, but there's also imagination. And out of that imagination, we go back to the practice at the Cape of the 2nd of December, sorry, the 2nd of January, during the period of enslavement, was the one day in the year that enslaved people had a day off after having worked themselves to the bone for the kind of the version of the silly season at the time during enslavement. And on that day, they would celebrate, sorry, in the streets. They basically had the freedom of the city. Well, relatively freedom of the city for one day, and that would involve music, dancing, bonfires, celebration, food, um, for the entire day. And so we took that concept, and also some of you might know this, but there's also the carnival tradition in Cape Town. And so up until a few years ago, the 2nd of January was actually a public holiday in Cape Town. We feel very upset that it's been taken away, because I think the rest of the country we needed to go with the national kind of demographic and what was happening. But anyway, and that was to mirror that practice. And so we kind of took that practice of doing this on the 30th of November. So we would gather at about 10 p.m. on the 30th of November in the city at a site associated with slavery. It started off with Prestwich, but then we've also taken the Castle of Good Hope, the slave market, all of those places. We invited the bands known as the minstrels, and also the Malay choirs, a version of what you saw last night, but not quite, and the Christmas choirs and the street bands and all the kind of new iterations of that processional element of music in Cape Town. A little bit of the Guma beat. Remember the last song that was performed by the comic person last night was about the Guma, which is a kind of a Cape jazzy kind of marching beat, and walked from site to site and ended at the slave tree with these bands leading us, and particularly bands that have included young children from the townships and who've been mentored into this kind of tradition, but without the history. The practice exists, but without the history. Excuse me. A lot of people had forgotten where the tradition had started. And so the December 1st approach was really a way of bringing all of that back and locating, joining the dots. And so we've got that wonderful, it started off just as people walking through the street with lanterns, replicating what the enslaved people had to do. They could not walk in darkness. They had to light up their faces so they could be seen. They had to wear tags. And eventually it is now preceded by workshops, and young and old. It's an intergenerational approach where they prepare from about the end of October going through November, Saturday workshops where they create an art component, something that they carry along kind of both symbolically and also something that represented from the archive of enslavement. And just to give you one example, or maybe two, a couple of years ago, people created lanterns, and we obviously couldn't do fire in it, but we had lamps, torches, yeah, inside that. And then there's some more dramatic moments also where people have created with clay and painted them the tags that the enslaved people had to wear to identify themselves. And at the end of the ritual at midnight, everyone just smashed the tags to represent freedom. So there's that kind of moment that, and we've documented it so well. We've just realized it's also, when I say we, sorry, maybe I was identified as we, it was a group of heritage activists, mainly led by District 6 Museum, but it kind of exists also in a kind of third space, which is institutional and also outside of that. I think it intentionally so. And so an archive that is held at the District 6 Museum over the past 21 years, well, 20, it's going to be 21 now, exists. It's a wonderful photographic
oral histories, workshop content, and video material. And this will form the basis of the publication that we are aiming to produce. We want to do it kind of written in multiple voices. We rely very much on the methodology of the District 6 Museum, which is also its education and writing program and research program is very much based in Paulo Freire and the kind of praxis writing approach. And we've had one workshop already where we are guiding people who are not usually writers, who are tellers of the story, and who hand over their experiences to others who write about them. So we've been trying to get people to take that back. And it's been a really interesting process. A lot of it are people who've been involved from the start, or at least for the past 10 years. And so getting them to reflect on the praxis more like a journal writing exercise, but which will morph and, well, not automatically, but we'll kind of mentor that into a process of theme-based, experience-based, historical, some fabulation and some poetry in this publication. And we don't know if, I mean, we're still working on. The coalition is, for a large part, existed with very little or no budget. And so we do a lot of skills exchanges. So depending on what skill we can get, we're not sure if we will have enough money to do the print publication, but it will definitely be available in digital, and that could possibly be used to fundraise for an actual print publication. Also, just a background to that, this walk in the night, also we took on the name of one of Alex Luguma's, a great South African writer. One of his novellas, A Walk in the Night. He talks about this journey of a character called Mikey journeying through District 6 in a very troubled night. And so we're using, and he also has his origins in District 6. So we call it A Walk in the Night. And so we're hoping that we can launch our digital version on Alex Luguma's birthday. I think he will be 101 on the 20th of February, 2027. So that's what we're aiming to do. Wearing my Stellenbosch hat. Don't worry how that's divided. I'm going to be still figuring that out. Yes. Sorry. They also, yeah.
Meeting two masters students from Stellenbosch along see.
Sorry, I got very carried away I get very carried away by December 1st. I forgot about, I was going to come back. So the two students also be working both, I think, with the publication and also with this, what we hope is going to be a bumper occasion of 21 years of walking in the night. So.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Questions, comments? Yes.
You good? Okay.
We want to do, should we do Northwest? Yeah. Let's do Northwest University. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, colleagues. Allow me to pull it out of the stand. Good morning, colleagues. Thank you so much, Prof. Esther et al. For creating this space for us to showcase our area of research at this symposium. I just want again to appreciate the colleagues who are part of my cluster from Northwest University who are here. I'm going to introduce them later. My name is John Ringson. I'm a public governance scholar specializing on child rights governance and development. and a research professor from Northwest University. Right, our project for this Dutch colonial slavery legacies focuses on the recovering of the voices, revisiting Dutch colonial slavery and its contemporary legacies in South Africa. And as I indicated earlier on, that I have a research team. Some of them are here and some of them are not here. I'm sure they are watching online. My research team, as I'm going to introduce those who are here at the moment, I have Manamela Mashavapala from Wits University. As Northwest Cluster, we thought of fleshing our and enriching our project by institutional collaboration, whereby we have Prof. Manamela Mashavapala from VETS. I'm sure he is here. You can show by raising your hand, he is here. And we do have Prof. Godfrey Maringira from Soplake University is also here. That's the uniqueness of our project. And we have Prof. Molope from Northwest University. She is here. And many others who are not here. Maybe let me just introduce those who are here. And our student was here as well, amongst others, showcasing what we are also focusing on. It was Lucy Mabikwa. All right, as I indicated earlier on, our contribution to this project in maybe 3 or 4-fold. Number one, we are going to write a book that focuses on the recovering of the voices, revisiting Dutch colonial slavery and its contemporary legacies in South Africa. We have already started conceptualizing the proposal for that particular book, and we want the book to be published either by the Routledge or Springer Nature. And we are also going to write articles around our project. We have got 4 themes, and our articles are going to be primarily focusing on those 4 themes. So at least not to put ourselves under a lot of pressure, we thought of maybe at least focusing on 3 articles that are going to be published mainly on the Q1 or Q2 journal articles. All right. And we are also going to have a symposium whereby our students are going as well to showcase whatever they might have benefited from the project, because our project involves the emerging scholars, the PDRFs. They are also part of this project with us, and we have got 2 PhD students, and we want, as the seasoned researchers around this project, to actually organize a symposium of mentoring the emerging scholars around whatever that we might have discovered. So in context and the theoretical grounding of our project, we have actually discovered that at the center of slavery is an untold social suffering of different aspects. And there is no doubt that slavery has led theorists to explore historical trauma, who are by no means the first thinkers around the legacies of colonization in the present day suffering. And in around 1957, Albert Many examined how colonization diminished the colonized people's hopes, which were transmitted to their children through colonial education, as well as Franz Fanon and Maime Cesari and others revealed that intimate relationships between capital interest and colonization, and ultimately the subjugation of people and their psychological well-being. So we actually understand and acknowledge that when we talk of the issue of trauma, it is mainly understood on the basis of the biomedical approach and psychiatric diagnostic categories, but also in the local ways, of framing it as a social discourse, so thinking about the past for healing in the present. And these are also some of the aspects that we would also want to unpack, both from the theoretical aspect, methodological aspect, and empirical aspect, based on the research title that I have actually indicated. And the other important aspect that we have discovered in theory and around the context of how we problematized our research here, we have also discovered that like any other socio-political discourse of suffering, historical trauma classifies people, places, and their forms of social suffering, and shapes how they understand themselves and their worldview, which is also the problem that we feel need to further interrogated, unraveled, empirically, theoretically, and methodologically. Hence, the methodology that we are going to use to unravel this particular project is actually based on what we call methodological pluralism. And on methodological pluralism, we are trying to make sure that we bring in some innovative methodologies over and above the issue of the traditional the interviews and questionnaires. Of course, we have got the interview component. That's the reason why we termed it methodological pluralism. Hence, we have got the archival, the documentary analysis, as well as the informal conversation, which we are actually going to engage around the Cape of Good Hope in order for us to really understand the meanings of what is actually transpiring on the basis of the historical trauma of the caused by issues of slavery. So this is around the issue of the context as I have problematized it. And more importantly, the main theme of the main objectives of our research, as I indicated earlier on, is to recover and recenter the silenced histories of Dutch colonial slavery at the Cape of Good Hope, and to analyze how its socio-cultural, spatial, and governance legacy continue to shape social identity, inequality, and a belonging among descendants communities in contemporary South Africa. And in responding to that particular main aim or objective, we have got four themes or thematic issues that we are going to focus on, and our objectives has been formulated around those themes. Number one, slavery, pre-colonial memory, oral histories, and legacies, which is actually going to be having a lead seasoned researcher on it, who is here, that is Prof. Maringira, and I'm actually going to be principal investigator. And this is the first objective and the first theme that we are having. And I will also maybe give Prof. Maringira just 1 second to unpack a little bit about it so that you can see how we are going to collaborate as a team. And number two, we have the architectural and spatial legacies, which is actually going to be led this particular objective by Prof. Molope, here present with us. And we have the women in domestic slavery, which is actually going to be as well led within our cluster by Prof. Karutza. She's not here, and she's one of the directors of the Center for Identity and gender in our university. And last but not least, slavery as a form of governance, which is led by Prof. Mashavapala Manamela here present today. So these are the themes where we coined our objectives around for this particular project. And on methodology, I'm not actually going to overemphasize and over-cultivate. I have indicated that this is actually going to be a methodological pluralism, of course, qualitative, but we are trying to make sure that our contribution is actually going to be both theoretically methodologically as well as empirically somehow innovative so that we don't over cultivate and double barrel some of the issues that has already been cultivated by others. We want to make our project as novel as it could based on our project and also the strong team that I have. So maybe just for a second, allow me just to call upon Prof. Maringira just to come and elaborate on the aspect of the theme that he is actually leading and the objective that is leading, as well as Prof. Manamela, you can as well come on the interesting nuggets of truths around the issue of slavery as governance and so forth. Thank you so much, guys. I think those two can actually represent others for today before we entertain any questions and what have you. Prof, can you come? And then Prof. Manamela, you can as well come and stand whilst we finalize. Thank you so much.
So thank you very much for the invitation, Professor Ringson. So my focus will be specifically on the idea of memory and slavery. So this question of memory and slavery is interesting to me in the sense that if we are to think of memory, it is quite intergenerational, but also drawing from the works of Lomsky-Feder, who talks about the idea of memory as a memory field. In a sense, memory becomes quite structured, that one can think of layers of memory like an onion, that the ideas of memory, how it plays out in the sense in which people remember and what they remember and why they remember the ways they do. And that is quite interesting. And importantly, when you talk about slavery, one may also think about the ideas around intergenerational, not just intergenerational trauma, but the ideas of intergenerational heroes. That in actual fact, when we talk about this idea of slavery, people may think of uh, those who are generations of slavery as victims, but in particular way, they can emerge as heroes, those who have become and survived those ideas of stories and how they continue to live with them. So this might be also be interesting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof, for that.
Yeah, thanks, Prof. Rinson. And good morning, colleagues. My name is Johnny Machabapala. As Prof. Rinson had already indicated, we will be working also on the governance component of the initiative. So in this regard, we'll be looking at the governance architecture of the Dutch slavery past and the afterlives. So in this regard, we'll be revisiting the whole notion of the governance architecture in its universal application, but then again, going back to the pre-colonial governance practices in the mold of Odera Oruga, that before slavery came, there were governance structures. People had governments, and then the governments that actually took care of their public value and their needs. And then again came the slavery era, where we saw the emergence of some of the contemporary themes that are being problematized by these initiatives, like your human scale development needs. I mean, more of a political economy take of the problems that had been created by slavery itself. The whole problem of now alienation, the problem of freedom, and issues like that. And yeah, last night I was also revisiting some of the problems, I mean, that issued out of these experiences. I mean, clearly from a conceptual realm, in the fabrics of existentialism, the problem of alienation is still happening. I mean, even in the small areas out there in the backwaters, you know, of some of our economic initiatives in this province, in this country. And then we're looking at the post-colonial era, governance in the post-colonial era in the polity. and also in the organs of civil society. And of course, towards the end, there we'll be looking at the governance architecture in terms of our future projections. There will always be this challenge of diversity. As people will be looking at the future, the governance futures in the context of their closed systems paradigm and others in terms of their open systems paradigm. Those contestations will be there, and then we'll be looking at how we can push towards the merging of horizons in that regard. And then, of course, maybe contemporaneous with these themes will be, as my colleague from Stellenbosch was indicating, the role of aesthetics and affirmation in the governance architecture, how through art, through music, through literature, people are able to articulate what they went through in the past, what they are going through in this contemporary era, and who they would like to be going into the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof. Right. So as you have heard, maybe just examples of the areas that we are going to be focusing on in recovering the voices. We're actually going to write a book, which I indicated that it is already on black and white papers as a concept, and just awaiting the field work that we are going to engage with very soon. And our proposal is already with the ethical clearance committee at the Northwest University, so that we can acquire the ethical clearance for this empirical and research that we are going to undertake here in Cape Town. And our articles again are going to be around those 4 themes, as is already exemplified by Prof. Manamela as well as Prof. Godfrey. So it is actually going to be quite a novel contribution, both theoretically, methodologically, and empirically. So thank you so much, Prof. Esther, for the opportunity once again. And the rest, if you have got questions, you, Prof. Molope, she was taking a video and she could not come afford to present the area that she's representing in the cluster. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Regarding oral histories and so forth, are you tapping into and working with, because I heard you mention Cape Town, oral histories, there's a long history of people working in this area, with a whole lot of oral histories already done, and the sensitivities around who asks the questions, where they get asked, and what happens. So I strongly suggest and urge you to connect with people who have already done this work, that's already there. Bonita, you could certainly assist there, because that experience is vast. It exists. It's those oral interviews are done. They are there, and with a limited budget, it would certainly help your budget if you could draw on that instead of just coming up, because I think certainly from knowing UP or ethical clearance at the University of Pretoria, it is rigorous, and the alarm bells will be ringing to have a group who are not necessarily from the Cape coming in to do this. And we cannot inflict any further harm on the descendants. So I urge you to reach out to those many people in Cape Town, and there are wonderful colleagues across the city, and certainly even at CPT, UWC, Stellenbosch, the District 6 Museum, and those wonderful young people from the Cape Flats were there last night. They've done this work, so to tap into that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that advice. We are going to try our best. Since it's qualitative, of course, we may not consult everyone, but we'll try our level best to consult a handful so that they can contribute to whatever we are going to triangulate with some other methodological aspect of our research. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your presentation. So I noticed that you mentioned that you would like to publish the book potentially with Routledge, for example. So I think I would like to put in a request for all of us actually here in this room to think about accessibility and sharing our research results. Like immediately I was thinking, for example, like if a book were to be published with Routledge or, any of the other international very big publishing houses, that would make the results inaccessible to, for example, the Indonesian community. Like the price point of these publishers is just above, beyond our reach. So I would like to encourage everyone, I think, in this room to think about how do we share the research results in a way that we could all benefit from that. So maybe we could do it open access, or maybe we can share with each other PDFs prior to publishing work, so that we could all take note and benefit and learn from each other, rather than that we would be sharing this knowledge that we would be producing and generating from indeed the ancestors and people that have suffered under systems of slavery and bondage. We need to be I think we need to share this as much as possible in a free way. So that's just a point that I would like to make for every one of us to, including ourselves, but to really be mindful of that.
No, thank you so much for that advice again. But in as far as maybe the routledge and issues of cost are concerned, we are actually enjoying the facility that we are having in our university of the open access, because our universities have actually partnered with those publishers. And once we publish, our universities is collaboration with those partners. It's going to make the publication an open access, so everyone will access the publication. And we are as well going maybe to circulate a call, because what we would also want is you to contribute if you have got any area of contribution that you might contribute, so that you can as well corroborate what we might have established as a team within our cluster of research. So we will just try to open it up to the research team, wherever you are, from Indonesia and whatever, just to have a contribution to that volume based on the thematic issues that we have actually outlined. We will circulate it amongst ourselves. I will talk to Prof. Esther, and then she will advise me around how to go about it. Thank you so much.
I was just going to say that the annotated bibliography will also include the oral histories that exist. So you can draw on that as well. It's just about timing. I'm not sure when you're starting that, but we will focus on that. And then there's also the District 6 Museum has a very large sound archive, and you'll find some information there. And I think Ezekiel also has in the Slave Lodge. I'm not sure what the extent of that is. Yeah. So I was just going to
Yes.
offer that.
Yes, indeed, we'll be in touch with you. We don't know maybe as of when, but yeah, when we were drafting all these things, as well as our projection, our contribution, we just thought as a team to say, guys, let's see, look beyond the budget and try to make something substantial out of this project and what have you. So we know that the budget is quite constricting, but we'll just try our level best. We are going to be here on the ground with the little resources that we are having to make sure that we accomplish what we have actually put on our proposal. Thank you so much, colleagues.
Sorry.
Well, just to add a little bit to our discussions, not only about the publication but also the process itself. Maybe we can also share the resources that available on internet from each of university or institution involved. I met, for example, yesterday with a gentleman who also helping, with the chanting. He told me that there is a internet database containing information and archives about Malay cave communities in the past. So I know that National Archives of the Netherlands, for example, has already digitized all the archives related with the slavery or Dutch slavery practices. But maybe also from each of the institution in the country, already developed a kind of database, online database, so we can really share. So we are going to do that also. For example, what we have in Indonesia, well, archive that could share also, a newspaper or any kind of online resources that we can really use for our research. Maybe, yeah. Thank you.
Any final comments? Thank you. Okay. We have University of KZN online. It's a quick break. 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Yes. All right. All right. Okay. before we move on to Suriname and Indonesia? Yeah. Okay, great. So this one is going to be a confusing one.
We're technical. Can you talk? Can we hear you?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
That's about marketing grade. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sure it'll work. No, it's fine, but it won't be too clear. No, she can hear us. We can hear her. I think it's fine. Going on. It's fine if you guys are happy. Yes, thanks. Catherine, go ahead.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Firstly, my apologies that I haven't been able to join you in person. I was able to follow much of yesterday's program online, although I have to say it made me even more disappointed that I couldn't be there, especially because I would have loved the opportunity to meet so many of you in person. But I want to thank Sheena and the teams at UWC and UP for bringing all of us together around this project. And what I'd like to do this morning is to just briefly speak about the contribution that I am developing from the UKZN side of the project, which is a special issue of the journal Genealogy titled The Afterlives of Slavery, Race, Labor, Memory, and Belonging. And please stop me if I'm taking too long or interrupt me if you need to. So when I first began conceptualizing the special issue, I thought quite carefully about how closely it should map onto the broader project, Dark Slavery Past and Their Afterlives. And the project itself already encourages us to think beyond slavery as a historical institution and to consider its enduring legacies. At the same time, I wanted the special issue to be deliberately broad enough to include not only work emerging directly from this project, but also other valuable studies engaging with the afterlives of slavery across different contexts, histories, and disciplines. So the special issue takes the afterlives of slavery as its broader organizing theme and asks, in particular, what happens to the racial categories, labor relations, social hierarchies, inequalities, and the idea about who belongs that were produced through these systems. How are they transformed, reproduced, reconfigured after slavery formally ends? And how do they continue to shape social relations in the present? So that is really the intellectual starting point for the collection. It allows us to engage the specific histories being examined through this project, while also opening the conversation to comparative and interdisciplinary work from beyond the project itself. And yesterday's discussions reinforced for me why this broader framing is useful. And as Sheena pointed out, although the history of slavery in South Africa is particularly associated with the Cape, its effects cannot necessarily be contained geographically to that area. We need to think about the wider systems of racialization, labor, and colonial governance of which slavery formed part, and how those systems developed and changed across South Africa. And for me, particularly working from KwaZulu-Natal, that also raises interesting questions about the relationship between different forms of unfree and racialized labor. My own contribution to the special issue, for example, is likely to look at the relationship between slavery and indenture and to ask what becomes visible when we place these different colonial labor regimes in conversation with one another. In KwaZulu-Natal, especially, the history of indenture and Indian indenture is central to understanding the development of the colonial economy, to racial categorization and particular forms of labor control. And those histories then intersect with later systems of racial and spatial ordering under segregation and apartheid. So I'm interested in that longer historical trajectory and in asking how particular structures, practices, and ways of organizing race and labor are reconfigured, reproduced, or given new forms over time. And I think this is where the idea of an afterlife becomes particularly useful, because it does not necessarily mean an unchanged continuation of the past. It allows us to ask how the past continues to structure inequalities and social relations in the present, even when the institutions and systems themselves have changed. And so that is also why the four concepts in the title. race, labor, memory, and belonging. That's why they are deliberately that broad. So, race and labor are obviously central to the histories of slavery and colonialism. But I also wanted memory in the title because one of the important questions arising from this project is how these histories are remembered, represented, and transmitted, or alternatively, what disappears from public and collective memory. And belonging opens another set of questions around citizenship, migration, diaspora, exclusion, and identity. Who is imagined as belonging to a nation or community, and who continues to be constructed as an outsider, and how some of these contemporary processes may have much longer historical roots. Um, the scope of the special issue also then extends beyond any one particular discipline. We are inviting historical, sociological, anthropological, political, cultural, and literary work, as well as interdisciplinary contributions. And I think that is particularly important for a project like this. A historian may trace an institution or work through the archive. A sociologist might examine the reproduction of inequality or racial categories. Literary scholars can ask how these histories are represented and remembered through cultural text, and scholars working in fine art and visual studies can approach questions of representation and memory in quite different ways. And we've already had interest from colleagues working across some of these areas, like fine art and English. So I didn't want the special issue to describe one particular way of understanding the afterlives of slavery. I would much rather that it creates a space in which these different approaches can speak to one another, and the same applies geographically. I've also circulated the call beyond South Africa and to our project partners in Suriname, Indonesia, and the Netherlands. The hope is that the special issue will not simply become a collection of South African case studies, although that is very valuable, but that we can bring different geographical experiences into conversation and think comparatively about the afterlives of slavery. So practically, there's been quite a bit of work over the past few weeks around building the collection. The call for papers has now formally gone out through genealogy, and I've sent direct invitations to more than 35 prospective contributors, both within South Africa and internationally. The call has also been promoted through social media, including the journal's platforms. The journal has also indicated that they are willing to assist with further dissemination to colleagues internationally. So I'm hoping that we can extend the reach of the call considerably beyond the networks we already have. The process is that prospective contributors submit a proposed title and an abstract of approximately 200 words. These are initially considered in terms of their fit with the special issue, and then the papers that proceed to full submission will go through the journal's normal double-blind peer review process. The abstract deadline is the 30th of September 2026, with full manuscripts due by 30th January 2027. So there is still time for colleagues who may be interested in submitting an abstract. One practical point I should mention is that genealogy is an open access journal, and there is an APC of 1,400 Swiss francs. That's approximately 28,000 rand. So for colleagues contributing through this project, there may be scope to draw on project funding towards page fees. But because I have deliberately opened the special issue beyond the project, I'm also very conscious that not everyone will necessarily have access to publication funding. The journal has indicated that there are mechanisms through which the APC may be reduced or in some circumstances fully supported. So if you are interested in contributing, but the APC is a concern, the journal can be approached directly to explore what support may be available. And I would certainly encourage people not to let the APC prevent them from considering a submission. So this is where the UKZN contribution currently stands. The special issue is live. The call is circulating. Invitations have gone out. And over the next few months, the focus will be on developing the contributions and hopefully building a strong interdisciplinary and international collection. If anyone here has not received the call for papers or has someone in mind who you think should receive it, please do let me know and I'll be very happy to send it through. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pillay. Does anyone have any questions?
What I'll ask Catherine, if it's okay, should share everybody's emails with Catherine so she can send the details of the special issue directly. Uh, I should. I'm not. Did everybody get it? Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Let's move on to Suriname to present.
Presented our agenda.
Okay.
Subject yesterday, so the question is if we should do it once more.
It's fine.
No, I feel like we've been running a collective marathon, really, after this morning. So very grateful to listen to all to you. And I was thinking, Manon just asked me the question, how on earth are we going to cooperate with all these projects and people? And I said, well, that's not necessarily intention. If you see any points of um, synthesis that you can make, then please reach out to the partners. But it's not the intention that you will be doing this work with 10 universities in South Africa. That is not doable. So wherever possible, feel free also to reach out yourself. It's not that we have to manage that. See the opportunities for yourself. But what we will be doing, Sheena, me, and Elaine, is provide you a structure of getting in touch with each other. That'll be online. There will be also a website. And we will be discussing this, how we can streamline it, because there's a lot of projects, a lot of deliverables. And we are going to think about how we can make it as much as accessible for all of you to find each other, but also make sure that well, there might be overlap. I don't really find that a problem. But if it can be more efficient, I think we should do. We have to find out, as we do in this project, along the way we are working on it. So I think that's important. For example, it was mentioned that we maybe can have an online webinar every 2 months to see what is going on with the project partners internationally. We have to look at the time zones, of course, because this is a global transoceanic project. It's going to be a challenge. We can break it up also in areas of geography or thematic areas. I've been writing down a couple of possible cooperation, but maybe that's not for now. We can work that out later, I think. But we've been making notes. We've been making also a report that we'll be sending out along to you. So yeah, maybe Sienna, you would like to add?
Thank you. So I'll be reaching out to people like you and a few of the colleagues so that we can frame the overarching question of the South African program and to see how each of these wonderful iterations respond to it, so that at least we have an intellectual home kind of thing for all of it. On a practical note, MOUs are going to be drawn up between the University of Victoria and each of the South African universities, where it's going to be explicit what you're going to produce, but when you're going to produce it, and how the money is going to be spent, so that we are able to account. In the first instance, to the NRF, and we all know, for those of us who work in South Africa, we know what the NRF is like with reporting, and we're going to have to adhere to those deliverables because we want this program to emerge without any scandal, without any taint of anything. So I will be communicating with I'll do an overarching framework of the presentations to try and bring this all together. From what I could understand, commit with each of you what's going to be done, and then in academic speak, work package, what are you going to do, the deliverables, a pathway to impact, and what you hope that impact is going to be. You know this, Sadia. You know this. So that, because that's the language, but it's also good for us to keep that in mind. It's not just we are doing this. It's an output that leads to a road to impact and what that impact is going to be. And then for those of you who have already, who UP has arranged transport for travel forth and so forth, we'll be deducting that from your overarching budget. Again, a heads up to the South African universities, because this is an NRF that's Prof. Muller, and it's our two names on that thing. So we've got to account for everything, and we've got to account for everything. It can't be, well, we're handing over the money and then nothing happens. So yes, yeah.
Thank you. If I may add something to the framework, maybe you have in mind to, let's say, produce a one-pager in which we can give an overview of what the different universities are doing. I made some notes. Maybe we can think of themes, topic, issues, the deliverables, the methodologies. Also, I heard critical fabulation. I heard what was it? Plural, pluralism, something like pluralism. I've heard oral history. Who are the, if you want to call them, co-researchers or target groups, the period and the discipline. No, the discipline, and maybe the scope also, from which you want to enter or answer your question, your research questions. So I came up with these caps to produce something like a table on a one pager that can gives us a clear view of what the different partners are doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any last questions, comments?
Any last questions, queries? We know where we're going. We know next. For those of us who want a little bit of very, very, very early lunch, Brooke, I'm right. It is ready. But for those of you who need to run off, I absolutely understand. On behalf of Esther, and thank you very much for coming. I know it has been a whirlwind. We've really just met. Prof. Muller, thank you. Your team, absolutely phenomenal. I think it's safe, phenomenal. Wow. And I don't think a single person here emerged unchanged after yesterday and when we ended up at the Brian O'Connell building.
Amazing. Fantastic. Okay, thank you, everybody. I think we're done for the day.
There's going to be so much feedback for the premature students and yes. And in fact, they can all come. I mean, if they want to come now and join us, it'll be absolutely wonderful too.
Yeah.